Hello, my name is Julie Powers, and welcome to Happy Cells and Souls. I am a licensed Zumba instructor, and I am a business partner with the Juice Plus company. And my mission in life is to help people understand that life is better when they're dancing through it and to inspire healthy living around the world. But my expanded mission is to create better health at the cellular level and more joy at the cellular level. I believe we just get one body, so we better take care of it while we're here on Earth. And we're supposed to be happy while we're here. We're supposed to spread light and love and joy in the world. And that's what I'm hoping happens with each of these videos. And I feel like I'm pretty privileged and honored and blessed that I have met so many very interesting people through my walk in life. And I believe that we can learn from everyone. And it doesn't matter where we come from, politically, socially, religiously, you name it. We are all different. But if we keep our minds and our hearts open, we can learn something from every single person. And so today we get to learn from Donna Womack. Now, Donna is just this she will say, kind of a low-key person. She doesn't have a very big story to share, she says, but that's not true because she has a really big story to share because she affects people's lives. She impacts tiny little brains in the school setting, and she impacts a lot of hearts with not only just herself, her personality, and her joy for life, but because she was able to take part in a project for the Chicken Soup books. And so I would love to introduce Donna, who is an elementary library media specialist here in Central Missouri. And so Donna, I know that you started a second career in teaching. You were in business marketing way back when, and then you decided, I want to be a teacher. And now you work through the library in the schools and you get to see all these little brains popping open with excitement when they read and they discover stories. Can you tell me a little bit about that before we talk about how you got started with the Chicken Soup project?
Well, it's the best. It's the best of both worlds. Before I became a librarian, I taught fifth grade for 1 year, and then I taught third grade and fourth grade as well. And that's wonderful. But in the library setting, as you talked about the little brains, I currently see first through fourth grade in, there's about not quite 400 students. And see them each week, and so over time you can really connect with the kids as they kind of progress through school. But this way I get to focus on my ultimate love, which is reading. And I was a reader when I was young, and there's been times in my life when I've been really busy and kind of let that slide. But it truly is the framework of everything else.
Right.
When you can read and enjoy things, that's a wonderful gift, but you also read for everything, in other subjects. You read for social studies, you read for science, you even read for math. And so it's, like I said, it's kind of the best of both worlds. Still get to teach, but get to focus just exactly on my favorite thing.
Right. And so when was it that you decided to move from reading into the writing realm?
Well, my husband and I, Dick, are empty nesters. And I've always kind of wanted to. There's something about it where you could leave something behind. Mm-hmm. And teaching does that anyway because of your connections. But I was just like, well, I have time on my hands. I think I want to kind of do something else. And Mineral Area College, I think I saw it on Facebook, an ad about they were going to teach some courses. Karen Sargent, who is a retired teacher from Arcadia Valley, mm-hmm. She did, I think we had 4 classes, and it was really focused on, I'm going to give you the kind of framework to write, to have stories submitted to Chicken Soup for the Soul. And she was an English teacher at Arcadia Valley, and talk about a cheerleader. If you've ever been a little nervous about, I don't know, she's wonderfully supportive. And, she's talked about the particulars. It has to be written. It has to be a true story, and it's written from your point of view. And then there's word length. And so I thought if I was going to dabble in trying to write, that having, instead of just sitting down, well, what kind of story will I write?
Right.
That's kind of a big amount to kind of chew. So that's kind of why.
And so then how did you choose the story that you wanted to write?
Well, if you are, and I think once the world gets better, Karen will be teaching some more of these classes through Chicken Soup, but the more of them she teaches, the more competition there is to get your story. Because of course I guess it's for sure national. I don't know if there are international writers in there or not, but this was the book that it was published in. But
if you hold that up again, because I know it's Chicken Soup for the Soul, Christmas is in the air, right? Right.
Yes.
And
so they publish about a book a month. And if you go to their site, it'll show you topics that they are currently accepting stories for. And it will give you the word count, but it doesn't, and it'll even give you some ideas. Like I got an email once you've published a story, then you get emails calling out for stories about cats, or next month it's going to be about angels, or the next month is going to be about self-care.
Right.
So when we were in the class, we went to the website and we looked at the different options, and Christmas is always just a big thing. I grew up in a really small town in North Missouri. I mean, there were 400 people and we lived on a farm 5 miles outside of town. I have 2 sisters and a brother. We were all born in a 7-year span, and my dad was a farmer. And so I actually wrote a story about looking for a Christmas tree to begin with. And that's the one I turned in. The one that was published was an idea I was working with in class, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And talk about someone dedicated. It was 2 or 3 weeks after the class ended. And Karen sends me an email. She says, I've just been thinking about your story, and maybe you should approach it this way. And the story that's published in the book is called The Sweetest Memories. And it is about a tradition that my mother and I had for about 30 years of making candy together every Christmas, the fudges and the divinities and all of these things. And my mom passed away 10 years ago. And at that time, there was that big pull with, did I want to do it on my own?
Right.
Did I want to honor her memory? So anyway, this story is about me missing her as I continue the tradition. So that was the second one I turned in. They didn't publish the first one, but they did the second one.
So you could submit as many stories as you wanted for
Yes, you can.
Okay. Because there might be some people out here watching this, the five people that are watching our video right now. And one of them,
bless their hearts.
Yeah, bless their hearts. I'm so glad that you're here watching this. No, really, that they might have a story that they've just been dying to tell. And usually they're pretty short stories.
Yeah, they are. I think the top limit, I should look that up, is maybe 1,200 words.
Yeah, which is not a lot. When you have to definitely hone your story and use someone who's very knowledgeable, like your teacher, and have some help to edit it properly, right?
Well, and when it's yours,
when
it's yours, you're just like, oh, that's a really important detail. Maybe
and
to you.
And they rip it out. Yes,
to the reader.
I know it's really it's like laying open your soul, and even though it's just this tiny little piece of your life, it's so emotional because it was tied to your mother, and and that she's not there, and it's an annual tradition. And so many of those Chicken Soup books have, they're just ripping your heart out right and left, right? And most of them end with this little glowing feeling around you, but that it's hard to be vulnerable on the page, where once you've written it and you're like, oh shoot, that's actually going to be out there forever and ever now. There's no taking it back. Yeah. And so
nonfiction writing is that way. It's not like you created a character and a boy and his best dog or something. So yeah, when you write those kind of things, it is. I submitted another one that I have not heard back from them. That is about when I had breast cancer. 10 years ago, and my mom had cancer at the same time, so it was a bit of a this is a terrible year. But we had planned a trip to Florida with the kids for to see Harry Potter's Wizarding World, because we were all big fans, and before I got sick, we were going to drive down there, and then I was just all about, I wasn't going to let this put me down. So we flew down there, but I am having chemo treatments just a few days before we went. And at that point, I was wearing a wig, because I didn't want to do the scarf thing where it was very noticeable, because some days you just ask me and then I'd start crying. So this one is about my son, Adam. And it goes to your note about the personal connection. He wanted to ride the Hulk roller coaster. Dick was tired. We drug all day. Lauren, our daughter, she's like, no, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Because he was only 13 at the time. I'm like, well, I'm not going to let you do it by yourself. So we had to put everything in a locker, and it was the most terrifying, 95 seconds of my life, because I thought my wig was going to fly.
Yeah, don't hold on to your wig.
Yes. So the whole time, my eyes are closed. I couldn't imagine walking up to a 20-year-old, kid that was running the ride, and it was dark, and say, you got a flashlight? Can we look around for my hair down here? So, yes.
Right. Wow. That's going to be a good story, because I'm sure that it will get picked up. And
I don't know, but it was fun to write it.
Right. That is so great. So as a library media specialist, how long have you been doing that particular role?
14th year.
14. So in 14 years, things have changed pretty drastically in terms of regular books and technology.
Right.
So I would love to hear your opinion on, I have my own opinions, and
I'm an old timer. I'm going to get in trouble.
Well, I just really feel like so many of our kids are not really reading anymore, that they're spending way too much time in front of a screen that is dangerous for their eyes. It's not helping their brains develop properly. But what do I know? I'm not a scientist. I haven't actually done the studies, but you're right there on the front lines with the kids. Can you tell me what you're seeing in terms of childhood development and brain development and reading acuity, using paper books, digital books, or all the other stuff that technology offers? Do you have
keeping in mind, my world is 6 to 10 years old. So, there's a significant difference in middle school and high school.
But that's a very, very important brain development age. That is extreme.
Yeah. So, and we dabbled in ebooks. Honestly, they weren't well used, because if you're around small kids at all, if given the option to, I'm going to do Angry Birds, and that dates me because I don't have small kids around me. If they're going to do that, or whether they're going to read an ebook, they're going to pick the games. But yes, what I see most is stick-to-itiveness. I have kids come and, I read a ton of kid books. We try to, what we call bless books, tell them a little bit about it. Last year during the pandemic, I would record the first 5 minutes or something in a video similar to what we're doing. The program's called Screencastify, but I would push that out to 3rd grade and 4th grade and try to get them hooked on the book so they would read it. Very few takers. I started a new book club to try to engage them in that, with both classic titles and some contemporary titles. And I was very proud of the kids that took part, but the stick-to-itiveness is a real thing. You'll have a student check out a book and you'll see them the next week and they bring it back and you're like, well, what'd you think of it? Well, I really liked it. Well, why are you turning it in? Well, I just want to get something else. But it is an issue that you have a 10-year-old kid that won't read a 200-page book. Graphic novels have been a massive influence in children's literature in the last few years. We called them comic books, but they're actually books. 200 pages. And they're great. And I totally buy into the idea. If you're reading, you're reading. Okay. I'm all about that. But you can't live in those books, because the vocabulary is not as high as what you're going to encounter as you read more traditional plot-based books, but it's better than them not reading. But I think that goes to the tenacity and sticking with the book too. I really love flipping through that graphic novel. And, when I sit down and, read a half an hour and, read 15 pages, that book's going to take me, 3 weeks to read. Right. But you have to be able to build that muscle. It's like everything else. You have to be able to build that muscle. You have to be able to retain, you in the classroom, you'll have kids that we used to call them word callers, could read beautifully. But if you don't understand what you've read, whatever. And then, of course, students that struggle with reading, sometimes just decoding the words, they have to work hard enough at that. By the time they get to the end of the paragraph, they're like, forgot what I read. But, reading is just like everything else. And I tell my students, I said, if you would give me $1,000, Mrs. Womack, to do a back handspring, I would love to have $1,000, but I can't do that. You read words, then you read sentences, then you read paragraphs, and then you move on up. Right. And you read more difficult books. But time, so many outside interests into it, including technology, is just so different. I mean, I don't know what I would have been like. I've been listening to podcasts this summer a bunch. I know. And they talk a lot about, had 3 channels on television. And when I was growing up, that's what it was. So you didn't really feel.
You didn't have that pull in 1,000 different directions. And I know that there have been multiple studies on the childhood brain and teenagers and people in their 20s, where, our children are hanging out, in that young adult life. And their attention span is very minimal. Like they literally cannot stay focused on things for a period of time because
even things they love.
Yeah. Their whole life has been and now it's going from a minute down to 30 seconds, down to 15 seconds, down to 7 seconds, and like, what? How do you do life? Right.
Right. Well, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about sports, even that this guy's adult children, would tune in and just get the snapshot that they even really loved basketball, but they weren't going to sit there and watch the whole game.
Right.
I just need the highlights. I don't know. And even conversations. And I love many things that technology will do for us. I love, that I'm out of mascara and I can order it online and I don't have to drive to the city. I love, I've been buying books from Amazon, for 30 years. I love those things, but there's a yin and a yang to everything.
Right.
And, I think too, something about cuddling up with a book.
And what you've done with reading in the classroom, in the library, is you're helping those kids make a connection. Because not only are they connecting to the story that they're reading, but having that conversation with you and connecting over a story is really important and impactful for them, because it's not always what somebody says, it's how they make you feel. And that's what you're going to remember. And then that is exactly what you did with your chicken soup story, is you put it into a little package of 1,200 words, but you threw in all the emotion of a real life story. And that's something that someone else will be able to connect with and maybe share with their mother or daughter or, other family member that they have traditions with. And so I applaud you, and I'm grateful for you for all that you're doing. And I just want to thank you for sharing this huge story that you think is a teeny tiny story. Is there anything that you'd like to say? We have 1 minute left. Anything really just like itching to come out?
Oh, I don't know that I do. I mean, I am kind of a preacher. I talk about to my students, you can spend 3 hours a week at soccer practice, and then parents will sit out there and sweat and wait on them. Spend 20 minutes a night and read with them. And when they get older, read. You don't have to sit together, but I read the same books my kids did for that conversation. You sit down to dinner. What did you think about that?
Right. Did you get to chapter 6 yet? Oh my gosh.
It's priceless.
That's
So,
great.
and thanks so much for your interest and your spirit and energy about everything. I appreciate the chance to chat.
Well, I am so thankful for you, and thank you for being here. And we will just wrap this up and hope that those 5 people that watch it really enjoyed it.
You be well, okay?
All right, thanks.